All right. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Fathers and Sons. I'm Heath Bailey, and I'm here with a special guest today. This is Mahlon Edwards. Mahlon is my wife's uncle. He's the elder brother of my wife's father, Arthur, my kid's grandfather. So it's really an honor and a privilege to have Mahlon here. I'm actually in Mahlon's home in St. George, Utah, and so I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk to Mahlon. Known Uncle Mahlon for many years. He's a good mentor and friend of our family and uncle. About fatherhood and maybe a little bit about life. Some of the things that he's learned over his life about fatherhood and being a good dad. So I wanted just to kind of start, maybe Uncle Mahlon, with with you, giving you a chance to introduce yourself. Maybe tell a little bit about your background, your heritage, where you grew up, your marriage to Aunt Carole. A little bit about growing up in Boulder City, Nevada, and a little bit about what you did for a living, and then we'll kind of get into some questions about your family and fatherhood, and we'll go from there.
Okay, I was born in Las Vegas, Nevada. I went to school through the first grade, and my father was asked to start the high school over in Boulder City, Nevada. That was a government town. It had been constructed to build Boulder Dam. They didn't think that the city would last, but it did. It grew. So he went over to build the high school. And we moved over there in about 1940. I grew up there. Then I went to the rest of my schooling through high school. My parents had 3 other sons. Arthur, who was about 3 years younger than I, and they had twin boys, Carole and Heath, about 9 years later. And we grew up in Boulder City, and we all 4 graduated from Boulder City High School. It wasn't a large school. My class was about 40, and I think the classes got bigger as the boys' other brothers grew older. I went to BYU for 2 years, and then was called on a mission. British mission. It was during the Korean War, and there weren't many called, but the draft board and the church made an arrangement that 1 man per ward per year could be deferred in the draft to go on a mission. And I was sent to the British mission and spent 1.5 years in Scotland, and then 6 months in London.
And this is a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Just before I went on my mission, I became acquainted with Carole Parker. And when I came home, she was waiting. She was at BYU also, and so during a semester, we borrowed a friend's car and drove up to the Latter-day Saint Temple in Salt Lake, and were married. And we were married for 70 years. And 3 weeks after the 70-year anniversary, she died.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
We had 4 children, a son and 3 daughters.
Yeah. And Aunt Carole, who we love as well, she is a bright and just a glowing soul. I mean, everything about her was just joyful and fun. She had quite an impact on you and your life and your decisions, I think. Would that be fair to say?
That's absolutely right. Yeah. She made life worth living.
Yeah.
She was wonderful. She was a spark of my life.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about your dad. maybe say a little bit more about both your mom and dad. Your dad, Albert, and your mom, Mary.
They they were both born in Panaca, Nevada, which is just a spot on the map. Settled by the pioneers. They're both grandchildren of pioneers whom they knew.
Yeah.
And they had pioneer values, both of them, both my mother and father. They were strict, very strict in morality. I remember one time between my junior and senior year, I was working. I worked at night from 7 to 11 as an usher in the theater. And then in the morning from about 6 to 7, I was a janitor in the telephone office. Then I worked at the school from about 8 to 4. And my dad was my boss at school. It was a new high school we were moving into, and so there were about 5 of us boys had jobs down there, putting desks together and putting the lockers together and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, my dad, as I would come home from being a janitor at the telephone office, he would leave for work. He knew where I'd been. And when I'd get to the school, I was late for work, about 15 minutes. And this went on for about a week. And then one morning he met me there. And he said, "Do you want to keep this job?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Then you better get here on time."
Yeah.
Well, in my brain, I figured 15 minutes was okay. And I figured he should know the difference with what I was doing. And it was a long walk from the telephone office home and then back down to school. And so I'd been rationalizing it was okay because the other boys were late too. And so it took me 2 weeks to figure out what it was he was trying to tell me. At home, he wasn't the principal. At home, he was my dad.
Yeah.
But at home, I was mad at him because he was about to fire me. But I finally figured out he wanted me to be honest and not take advantage of his position. And there was no rationalization that would justify me being late.
Yeah.
If I was going to have 3 jobs, then I better work at it or quit one of the jobs. And so that was a lesson that I still remember.
Yeah.
All my life I've thought of that you don't take advantage of your job. You do the honest job.
Yeah. You know, I never met your dad. I think he had passed away before Melinda and I, started dating and got married. I did know your mom. In fact, we lived in your mom's in your old house on Avenue I out in Boulder City for a while when we were first married, and got to know your mom very well. And it was, Boulder City, even today, is not a very big town. And I think probably back in those days was even a tighter community. I think I've heard stories about how highly regarded your dad was in the community and just what a well-respected and honest person he was. I don't know if you have any, stories or any, specific examples of that kind of his reputation in Boulder City and in Las Vegas.
Well, he did have that reputation, and he earned it. I remember when he was buying furniture, buying desks and things for the new school, he took me over to Las Vegas with him, his Surratt's office supply. And after he put in a big order that the government was going to pay, why, he noticed on the shelf a pen, and he says, "And I think I'll take one of these. How much is this?" And Mr. Surratt was doing the work, and he says, "For you, that's nothing. That's yours." And he says, "No, it's not. How much is it?" And he said, "No, take it as a gift." And he said, "No, not take a gift, as a gift. How much is it?" And he wouldn't tell him, so he put it back. He wouldn't take it. He wouldn't take any gift for afraid that it went as a gift. It might persuade him to be a customer more often.
Yeah.
He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't yield at all.
Wasn't going to use his position as the buyer for the school.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. And your mom had a big impact on you as well. I mean, I knew her and what a force of nature she was. She was such a special lady, always so busy and had a great influence, I think, not just on your family and your values, but on your faith as well, right?
Right. Yeah. She was the spark of my religion.
Yeah.
She's the one that taught me to pray. And how to continue to pray until I reached heaven. That's the truth. There are stories I could tell. Do you want a story?
Yeah, you want to tell one?
When I was 7, I had scarlet fever, and they had just come out with the sulfa drugs. We had one doctor in town. My mother wasn't convinced that he understood what a youth or a child's dose would be as compared to an adult dose. And she thought that he probably gave me an adult dose. It helped with the disease, but it caused me to have hallucinations. And one night I just I saw a hallucination that just woke me up, and I was yelling, and she came in to help. My dad was quarantined away from the house, and
wow,
it scared me so bad I couldn't go to sleep. So I went 2 nights without sleep, and my mom figured I was having a nervous breakdown. The doctor was offering what he could, but it didn't do any good. Finally, one night she said, "Do you think Heavenly Father could help you sleep?" And I said, "Yes." And she says, "Come on over, let's have a prayer." So I knelt at her knee, and I think she helped me and say the prayer. And I got up and went to sleep. Well, that was that 7-year-old lesson on prayer affected me all the rest of my life. There was another occasion after she'd had the twins. She was a small woman, and the twins were full size. And it had pulled things loose. And so they had to take her back into Las Vegas to have her repaired. And she came home, and my grandmother lived in the town. Her husband had just died, and one night I heard a lot of noise going on in the kitchen. And my brother Arthur stayed in that we shared a bedroom. And I got up and went into the living room, and there was my grandmother in the rocking chair, rocking back and forth. And then my brother came in, and she was saying, "Oh, Mary's going to die. What are we going to do? What are we going to do?
Wow.
Oh, what are we to do? Mary's going to die. Mary's going to die." Well, Dad was in the kitchen crushing ice to give her an ice pack to slow down the bleeding while he drove her in the car back to Las Vegas. Well, they left, Dad took Mom, and they left in the car. Grandma was still laying back and forth in the rocking chair, saying the same words over and over. It didn't comfort us much.
No.
So Arthur and I went in our bedroom, and I said, would you like to have a prayer? And he said, yes. So he came over to my bed and we said a prayer for them all. And then I said, would you like to sleep with me? And he said, yes. And an interesting thing was, it was that night that I realized I actually love my brother, love my little brother.
Yeah.
Well, the next day at lunch, my dad came home from work and he had a piece of venison out of the refrigerator and cut off a couple of steaks and was cooking them. And I said, what you doing? And he said, well, I'm having a couple of steaks. And I said, can I have some? And he said, no. I said, well, how come you are? And he says, because I gave your mother 2 pints of blood last night. And I thought, if my dad's blood saved my mother, I'm never going to question whether the blood of Jesus can save me. And it was a foundation. And I'm sure that the prayer we had that night helped, but it also helped us think religiously regarding the events that happened.
Yeah.
And I've never questioned it since.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. How old was Arthur at the time? You remember? How old were you?
Well, the twins were born in 1942, and this was right about 1942. So I was born in 33, so I'd have been 8 or 9. And Arthur would have been, he was born in 35. So he'd have been.
That's about 6,
Yeah,
5 or 6.
5 or 6.
Wow. Wow. Well, thanks for sharing those stories. So Arthur, just for listeners, Arthur is my kid's grandfather, and my wife's Melinda's dad. Anything else about your dad? Any other lessons about fatherhood that you learned from
my dad? My dad worked at the school, especially during the war. They kept drafting his teachers. So he was the principal, but he was also filling in as a teacher in the high school for the men that were gone. And so he didn't have a lot of time off.
Yeah.
But once in a while he would. And whenever he did, it seemed like he'd take me. He bought me a little .22 rifle, and he'd go out bird hunting or deer hunting or something. He had a hunting buddy, but he did always take me. I remember on one camp out, he's talking to his friend, and he says, "Well, let's divide up the expenses for the food and the gas." And he said, "Okay, we'll divide it in 2." And he said, "No, we should divide it in thirds. I've got a partner here, and I've got a son here." And the man said, "No, I'll pay my share. I'll pay your share of him. That's a debt all men owe youth." And I'll never forget that.
Wow.
And I was just a kid. I was maybe 10.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I grew up Boulder City had those kind of men.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was. He was the editor of the newspaper.
Wow. That's
for
really
Boulder City News.
I'll have to remember that one. Well, you, after your mission for the church, you finished it at BYU, and then you went to law school.
Well, first of all, I went ahead and got a master's. I wanted to be a teacher.
Okay.
And I got a master's degree in counseling. We went to Las Vegas and got a job. I was in debt, though. And when it came to paying back the debt and meeting the expenses, it didn't add up that year.
Yeah.
I didn't make it. We were in debt when we got out.
And you and Carole were married by this point.
We were married and we had a little boy.
Okay.
And so I decided, well, what would the doctor tell me? The doctor can afford to send his kids to school, but I can't afford to send my boy to this doctor. And he would say, then be a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So I started looking around, and a job opened up at the test site as a technical writer. Well, I had my degree in physical sciences, and I had written a thesis, so I felt like I could do that, and they took me. EG&G was the subcontractor
Right.
of the test site.
Right.
So I worked up there for a year, earned enough, and overtime, when they started testing again, we worked 59-day weeks, and we got overtime. I paid off our bills, and we bought a little house, and I got Carole a washing machine. We were living pretty good. And the thought came to my head, this job won't last forever, and it's not the job you want anyway. And I said, then what do I want? And I got looking into things. And a man had just returned I was put into a bishopric in one of the wards, and I was in the bishopric meeting. A bishopric man in another ward had just returned from law school. And I said, how do you go to law school with a family and pay your way? And he says, well, just do what I did. And I said, what did you do? And he said, you go to Washington, D.C., you talk to Senator Cannon and get on his patronage, and he'll get you a job as a Capitol cop or in the post office, Capitol Post Office, and you go to night school.
Hmm.
And so that's what I did. And it was amazing, and it worked out. Now, this is the hard part was we had a little boy and we had a little girl by this time.
Yeah.
We uprooted them. We took them away from their grandparents. We took them away from their old friends and everything. We put them into an apartment where they didn't have friends, and we were in a new ward of the church.
Where did you live when you were
We lived in Falls Church.
Yeah, okay.
And
in Virginia, Northern
Virginia.
Yeah.
And we went and I worked in Washington and went to the George Washington University at night. I was teaching seminary in the morning.
Okay. Seminary is the church's religious education program for the high school kids.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that kept me level.
Yeah.
It kept me straight. And it was good, but it took time.
Yeah.
And so the bishop called me in one day, bishop of the ward, and he said, we're having trouble with your boy. I said,
this is Clay.
With Clay.
Yeah.
He said, he's not acting right in primary and junior Sunday school. And I said, what should I do? And he said, spend more time with him. That's it. I figured, well, okay.
Having been to law school myself, I can appreciate the challenge that the bishop is giving you there.
Yeah, but it was a solution. It wasn't and so I said, okay, I'll do that. I won't study when I'm home. When I'm home, I'll belong to my kids.
Yeah.
And I won't even eat. I won't eat supper until they're in bed. I'll come home and I'll play with them. I'll be on the floor with them and play Indians, and we'll set up a little tent and we'll do whatever it is they want to do at night. And then on Saturdays, we'll do things with the kids. We'll go to the parks. We'll go to the battlefields and we'll play Indians and guns and all that kind of stuff with them. And I didn't ever study on Sunday anyway. I made that deal with myself. I wouldn't study on Sunday.
Yeah.
Well, naturally, when you make a decision to go one way, you can't go the other way too. And it did affect my grades. There's no question about it. But I've never regretted it. I didn't want to lose my son.
Yeah.
And I would rather lose a job than my son. And we made it fine.
Yeah, that's great. You and Carole, how did you navigate challenges together as a couple? What were some of the things you did to ensure that you were on the same page?
One of the things we did for the family, and this started in Virginia because it was while we were at law school, they came out with the family home evening manual. So that was a great thing. That helped me a lot.
And so explain just what is family home evening. I'm not
family home evening. Was a 1 day a week. Monday was family night. It belonged to the kids.
Yeah.
Didn't belong to anybody else. Keep the phone off the hook.
Yeah.
And we played games, and we'd have a lesson. We'd have a gospel lesson based on scriptural stories or something like that. And we could even act them out. And we could draw pictures and stuff. And then Carole would have refreshments for us, something to look forward to. Well, that was part of the big decision. The other one was we had a date night on Friday night. And once in a while that got hurt. But then I'd take Saturday or something. But I had to have a date night with Carole every week. And then during the day, either during lunch hour or sometime in the afternoon, I had time, I'd call home. And she would always have a list of things the kids were doing. And I would talk it over with her, and then I'd say, okay, well, I'll take care of it when I get home. When I got home, was all taken care of every time.
Yeah.
And that really helped us both.
Yeah.
It made me a part of it, and she knew I was a part of it. And it helped her to know that she wasn't alone.
Right. It was good for her to be able to talk to you about it, talk through those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It worked out. It worked out okay.
So you and Carole you have 4 kids, right?
Yeah.
Clay, Donna, Cheryl, and Mary.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that Luke and I, my son, on these conversations, we always seem to repeat a lot of themes. And one of the themes we talk about a lot is that we often learn from our children. We learn a lot of lessons from our children as fathers. I don't know. Have you found that as a father? Have you learned from your own kids lessons? Either about how to be a better father, or about the gospel, or about how to be a better person from your kids, from either watching them or interacting with them.
Yeah, for sure. My daughter, I was in charge of the youth for 10 years, the church group. And one of the things we do is take the boys up Mount Charleston.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just outside Las Vegas, the big mountain there.
The big mountain that always has snow on it. Not always.
Yeah.
But in the summer, yes.
That's right.
I mean, in the winter.
Right.
And it's 11,718 feet.
Yeah.
And we'd take the boys up for a hike. And my daughter, just graduating from high school that year, she says, I want to go. And I says, you can't go. And she says, why not? And I says, because you're a girl. And she says, oh, what's wrong with being a girl? I says, there's nothing wrong with girls. They're very nice. Everybody should be one. But you can't go up with boys. It just doesn't work out. And she says, well, why don't you take me? And I says, I will. When do you want to go? She says, next week. I said, okay. So we did. We went up the next week. We went up and camped out in the meadow, and then hit the peak and came on back down. And that same summer, I went down and had a Supai Canyon with her.
Yeah.
As part of a trip with the girls.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. You learn from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we've learned many of those same lessons with our girls.
One thing I learned is this is one more thing. As Clay entered around the 14, I had him, but he was drifting from me. I could tell he was getting in with some other kids, and they were getting into harder music than I liked, and they were playing the NFL. They were watching the games, and that was hard on me because I'm not interested in those professional sports. I got thinking about it, and I thought, well, maybe I better be. But I made a deal with him on our home evenings. If we finished the home evening in time for the Monday night football game would be over, and they'd have halftime. If we could finish in time for halftime, then he could watch the Sunday the follow up of the Sunday games that he missed, and then watch the rest of Monday night.
Yeah.
And one time, one of my partners at work had a little book, and he was showing me off. It was all the games. And I said, can I get tickets for the Redskins? That was his team, the Washington Redskins, playing in Los Angeles, the Rams. And he says, yeah. And he turned to the page. And he says, there's a game coming up in 2 weeks. I says, can you get me 2 tickets? And he said, yeah. Well, I got them. And I showed him. And he was the happiest kid in town. He said, can I take these to show the kids at school? I said, sure, just don't lose them. And so we drove down there, and it turned out to be one of the best things I ever did.
That's fun.
I didn't enjoy the game as much as I enjoyed being with him.
Being with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, Melinda does that kind of thing, and I always marvel at it, you know, making a deal where, you know, you recognize what the kid, you know, where you can meet the kid halfway on something. And, you know, my instinct was always sort of to draw a line. But sometimes you recognize that the line doesn't always have to be exactly where your initial thought was. You can still teach a principle, and the line can be in a little bit different place, and the principle can still be taught. Melinda's really good at that. So, yeah. I have one more question for you. So you're not only a father, you're a grandfather, you're a great grandfather. You're a great grandfather?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm a new grandfather, and it's the best thing.
Yeah.
It's the best thing.
You wonder why you didn't have them first.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they were saving that, saving the sweetest part.
Yeah.
You have any advice for a new grandfather?
Well, just love them.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing. You can love them, and you don't have to discipline them.
Yeah.
You can be their friend.
Yeah.
I like that. Let the parents worry about the discipline. You just love them.
I like the story you told me about Cirque, your grandson. You want to tell that story about the hair?
Yeah. Yeah. He'd stayed somewhat with his grandparents on his dad's side, and they didn't like his long hair. He had long hair, and that just bothered him, and they wanted him to cut it off. And he came down to see me, and I told him, I said, Cirque, keep your hair as long as you can.
Yeah, we can both appreciate that one.
Yeah.
We love you, Uncle Mahlon.
Thanks.
You've been a great influence on me personally, on my family, my mom and dad, of course, on Melinda. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for joining us on our little podcast.
Well, I've been a very, very blessed man all my life.
Yeah.
We have ups and downs, but the Lord has blessed me. And the downs have been lessons I needed to learn.
Yeah, that's how it is sometimes, I
Yeah.
think. All right. Well, thank you.
Okay.